If you're planning a trip to Spain and you love wine, there's a really good chance you're overlooking one of the most fascinating wine destinations in the world. Most travelers head straight for Rioja, Ribera del Duero, or maybe Priorat, but the Canary Islands offer something completely different. Volcanic soils, ancient grape varieties, dramatic landscapes, and wines you can barely find anywhere else. After spending time exploring Tenerife and Lanzarote, I'm convinced every wine lover should experience these islands at least once. By the way, I'm Hilary Zio, certified sommelier, two-time wine book author, and restaurant owner. And after 20 years in the wine industry and visiting more than 50 countries, this channel is all about travel for wine lovers. I share the exact wineries, bars, restaurants, and destinations that I personally recommend after visiting myself. So if that sounds like your kind of content, subscribe below. The first thing that struck me about Tenerife was how quickly the landscape changes. Within a single day, you can drive from lush green mountains to black volcanic beaches and through banana plantations and into terrain that really feels like another planet. Mount T dominates the island for almost every angle, so reminding you that this is still an active volcanic landscape. The roads twist through tiny villages, dramatic cliffs, and vineyards that seem impossible to farm. Even before the first winery visit, I knew this was going to be a special trip. One of the things that makes Canary Islands so fascinating for wine lovers is that phylloxera never arrived here. So many vines remain planted on their original rootstocks, something that's almost unheard of in the wine world today. The islands are filled with indigenous grapes that most wine drinkers have never even heard of, and many nearly disappeared after local growers worked really hard to revive them. The result is a wine that culture that feels completely independent from the mainland in Spain. These aren't wines trying to imitate Burgundy or Napa or Tuscany. They're distinctly Canary Island. My first winery visit was Vinatigo, and it immediately set the tone for the trip. Founded by Juan Jesus Mendez, this estate has become one of the leaders in preserving indigenous Canary Island grapes. The winery itself is built directly onto volcanic rock and blends naturally into the landscape around it. Looking out across the vineyards, it just becomes obvious how challenging farming is here, with steep slopes, dramatic terrain, just in every direction. These wines felt as unique as the scenery, especially the gual based whites and the vibrant Listan Negro reds. What I love most about Vinatico is that every wine felt connected to the place. Rather than talking about international varieties, the conversations really centered around grapes that have been part of these islands for centuries. It reminded me of visiting regions like Georgia or other parts of Greece where wine culture developed independently for generations. The tasting felt more like a lesson in Canary Island history than a standard winery visit. So if you're someone who enjoys discovering wines you've never seen before, Vinatico is an absolute must. Another standout was Tajinaste in the Val de la Orotavia. The drive alone was worth the visit, with winding hillsides overlooking the ocean. But owner Agustin Garcia returned after studying winemaking in Bordeaux, and he brought a fresh perspective to his family's historic estate. Some of the vines are more than a century old, and the vineyards seem to tumble down towards the sea. It's one of those places where you constantly find yourself stopping to take photos because every view just feels postcard worthy. The wines at Tajinaste were some of the most memorable of the trip. I particularly love seeing how Listan Blanco and Listan Negro expressed themselves in this environment. There was freshness and minerality to many of the wines that felt completely natural, given the proximity to the ocean and the volcanic soils. Their wine shop, Vino Filos, is another reason to visit because it offers a chance to explore bottles across the Canary Islands. If you're a wine nerd, you could easily spend a whole afternoon there. And one of the most dramatic winery experiences of the trip was Bodegas Manje. The winery sits in a spectacular location overlooking the ocean, and the views really just justify the visit. The Manje family has been making wine here since the 18th century, and you can feel that sense of history the moment you arrive. Just walking through the cellar and seeing barrels that have been used for generations was so fascinating. It felt less like a commercial winery and more like being welcomed into like the family story. The tasting at Monhe was paired with lunch, which was excellent. That experience was just made even better. And we enjoyed local dishes while overlooking the vineyards and the ocean. It was one of those afternoons where nobody wanted to leave. Their Listan Negro wines were among the favorites of the trip for me, and the rosé was perfect for the warm weather. This is exactly the kind of winery I recommend to travelers because it combines wine, food, scenery, and culture all in one stop. Even non wine drinkers would really enjoy spending an afternoon here. Outside of wine, Tenerife offers plenty of reasons to visit. One of my favorite discoveries was the natural volcanic swimming holes known as charcos. So we spent hours relaxing at Charco de Laja, Charco de Viento, and just swimming in crystal clear waters while waves crashed dramatically against the lava rock coastline. It felt wild and untouched, really, compared to many traditional beach destinations. These were some of my favorite moments of the entire trip because they gave us a chance to really slow down between our winery visits. Another stop I highly recommend is El Drago. This is a famous 1,000-year-old dragon tree in Ica de los Vinos. Seeing it in person is surprisingly moving because it just feels mythical. The surrounding gardens are beautiful for a walk, and the town is just a makes for a great afternoon of wandering. We also went to San Marcos Beach, which is black sand beach surrounded by cliffs that feel so very Canary Islands. And if you're coming from somewhere like Tuscany or Napa, these landscapes will just feel completely new. So for accommodations, I stayed at Boutique Hotel San Roque in Garachico. I'd book it again without hesitation because Garachico became my favorite town on the island. It just feels really authentic. It's not overrun by tourism, and the hotel itself was peaceful and elegant. Most afternoons, we really had the pool all to ourselves, and the service there was exceptional, including helping us secure an automatic rental car, which is not always easy in this part of Spain. And the food scene in Tenerife really deserves more attention than it receives. Mirador Garachico offered one of the best combinations of food, wine, and views that we found on the islands. Aristides served some of my favorite local seafood, along with incredible mojo sauce and these traditional wrinkled potatoes for dipping. Los Pinos became our go to casual spot for tapas, and they have a lot of local specialties. And then Anturium at the hotel provided a really refined experience with excellent service and memorable meals. One favorite was Don Quichaco. It's a casual Spanish street food spot that really just exceeded expectations. And after days of tasting all their cuisine, those tacos and nachos were exactly what we wanted. Sometimes those unexpected meals to just become your favorites and your favorite memories. And that's definitely what happened here. We followed lunch with homemade gelato. We spent the afternoon wandering around town. If Tenerife feels lush and dramatic, Lanzarote looks like another planet and it feels just entirely different as well. The vineyards are planted in individual craters that are dug into black volcanic ash, creating the most extraordinary wine growing regions on earth. La Garilla, Lanzarote's most famous wine region, is just surreal. It's one of those destinations that instantly moves to the top of your travel list the moment you discover it. The winery I went to was El Grifo, one of the oldest wineries in Spain and really the most respected producers in the Canary Islands. It was founded in 1777, and the estate has centuries of history and produces some of the best benchmark wines of the region. Their Malvasia Volcanica wines are famous for combining freshness, texture, and minerality. The property also includes a museum, historic buildings that make the visit feel sort of like an immersive experience as well. It's exactly the type of winery that I love recommending to people. Another producer I loved was Los Bermejos. Their wines have developed a strong following among the sommeliers in New York because they highlight indigenous varieties while remaining incredibly expressive and food friendly. They strike that ideal balance between tradition and innovation. They're the types of producers that I always seek out when I'm traveling because they tell the story of a place rather than just chasing international trends. And the restaurant scene in Lanzarote is so outstanding. We went to La Tegala. It's a Michelin starred destination focused on local ingredients and Canary Island wines, making it an obvious stop for wine lovers. Casa Torano sits among the vineyards of Lagaria and sits among the vineyards of La Gueria and offers exactly the type of wine country dining experience that I enjoy. For seafood, check out El Risco in Farmara, which is always going to have coastal views and be beautiful. It's a destination beyond the wineries themselves. So, the biggest takeaway from Tenerife and Lanzarote is that the Canary Islands remain one of Europe's most underrated wine destinations. The wines are distinctive, the landscapes obviously unforgettable, and the experiences are simply authentic. For adventurous wine lovers, it might be one of the most rewarding trips you can take. Before you go, if you'd like to learn more about wine, but you just don't know where to start, check out my online course, Wine Expert in 30 Days. It's designed for anyone who wants to feel more confident buying, tasting, and talking about wine. So the course includes 14 lessons with quizzes afterward and lifetime access. But I'll put a link in the description below. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.